We have run down our armed forces in the most astonishing way, especially in terms of manpower. And that applies to the Army, to the Navy, and indeed to the Royal Air Force. So when the Chief of the General Staff, Patrick Saunders, says if it comes to a conflict with Russia, we'll need to bring back conscription, I wonder whether he's playing a game. He's hoping for lots of outrage at the idea. So hopefully this government, or the incoming Labour government, if that's what it's to be, will start to build up the size of our forces again. That is what I suspect his political game is. I could be wrong. That's just my sense of it. Well, I'm joined down the line from Southampton by Phil Campion, former SAS Trooper. Now, Phil, I have little doubt that if people felt that their country, their community, their family were under threat, I think the vast majority of people would still accept the call, don't you?
I think they would, yeah. I'm absolutely adamant that they would. And if you look over into Ukraine now, you know, there were men actively trying to get back to their country from relatively calm, decent lifestyles that they were enjoying in places like this. So I've got no doubt that people would want to go back and fight and do the right thing.
Well, when I say most people, and we must remember, you know, that in both world wars there were conscientious objectors, and we perhaps used them rather more intelligently in World War II than World War I. And there were people that objected to national service, the last national serviceman finishing in 1963. So, you know, conscription was never popular across the entirety of the board. But, Phil, I wonder in the modern age, if we have conscription, does that mean women as well?
I think it would have to mean women as well. But let's not take this conscription thing too far. I don't think conscription works, personally. I don't think it's a great idea. And I say that because a conscripted soldier will never, ever fight like a volunteer. I think come a push becoming a shove, I think people will volunteer, and they'll volunteer in their droves. I think where we need to be, what the General's message really was, you've let us down. You haven't spent any money on us, and you're cutting things left, right and centre. You need to seriously put your hands in your pockets, rebuild this army, so that if a push does become a shove, we're in a position where we can accept and train and progress forward. And in the meantime, if there's to be any community training whatsoever, we should be pushing values and standards into schools and giving young people something to put a bit of pride around them in this country.
Would it be helpful, Phil? I mean, the Territorial Army now, of course, rebranded the Army Reserve. We don't hear much emphasis in terms of advertising or recruitment for that. Indeed, I don't hear much about cadet forces available for young people around the country. Would that be perhaps a good way of getting more people up to some level of military training?
A superb way, Nigel. And basically what they did was, during these last periods of conflict that we've had, they rebranded the TA into the reserves, and they did a tremendous job, and they brought them up on par with the regular army. But because we're now post-war, we're not even post-war anymore, we're almost pre-war, okay, these levels need to be attained to again. You know, we've still got a very large cadet force who do extremely well for us. And there'll never be any shortage of young people who are willing to answer the call. But the government are the ones that need to spend the serious money to make sure that we can facilitate anything that goes wrong. It would be foolish not to.
Yeah, no, Phil, absolutely. I think you and I both see this the same way. This was the Chief of Defence Staff basically saying, look, you know, actually, as you say, you've let us down. Conscription would lead to all sorts of calls of outrage. Let's do a bit more for our armed services. Phil, as ever, delight to have you on the programme.